We're live and now recording. Yes, Mr. Antonio?
Here.
Mr. Badger?
Here.
Mr. Bleefeld?
Here.
Ms. Chiavacci?
Here.
Mr. Frank?
Here.
Mrs. Heyman?
Here.
Ms. Carrie Nikes?
Here.
Dr. Morris is here. Mrs. Ginsburg?
Here.
9 present, 0 absent, and no student board reps this evening.
Thank you, Katie. All right, would everyone please join me now in saying the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening, and welcome to this August 22nd meeting of the Wissahickon School Board of Directors. Looking at our agenda, we list out first our prior meetings. We met on June 6th for our regular public board meeting. On June 13th, the board met for its annual board retreat and goal setting session. On June 20th was the North Montco Joint Operation meeting. June 22nd was the MCIU Board of Directors meeting. And on July 21st, we had a special public board meeting. The next session lists out our upcoming meetings. Excuse me. September 19th is our policy committee meeting. September 27th is our work session. And October 3rd will be our next regular public meeting. All right, now we will move on to our presentations this evening. The first one is on the Code of Student Conduct.
Yes, thank you. We're so pleased to have Ms. Latour, our Director of Equity and Cultural Responsiveness. She's with us this evening to present a brief summary of the revisions to the Code of Student Conduct. A memo of the changes was sent to the board earlier in August. And as a reminder, during tonight's meeting, we will seek board approval of the revised Code of Conduct dated today, August 22nd, 2022. Thank you for joining us, Ms. Latour.
Thank you. So good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to provide you with an update to our Student Code of Conduct. So Wissahickon School District has had a Student Code of Conduct in place for many years. This summer, July 2022, we had the opportunity to do some revisions. The revisions were very essential to us in terms of the work that we needed to do. Based off the previous year, 21-22, we did a Code of Conduct microstudy. And that microstudy provided us with recommendations that we reviewed and that provided us with opportunity to focus on what we could do to have responsive steps in place. So as you look here at this piece, the first slide really highlights some of those revisions that we began to make and we took note of. One being very important to us is the teacher managed interventions for the classroom setting. We wanted to empower our teachers with responsive practices that they can employ to address behavior that they were seeing in the classroom. So the explicit teacher managed behaviors, again, aligned very closely with evidence-based practices that we use, such as social emotional learning, competencies, and restorative practice. The other gamut of revisions that we looked at was the shared roles for our faculty, staff, students, parents, and guardians. We know the first and foremost thing here is creating a culture of belonging. So we are going to continue to encourage fostering the culture of belonging and developing meaningful and authentic relationships. Should behavior arise that is concerning, one thing that we want to do is to make sure that as a community, we have shared roles and commitments. And so in our Code of Student Conduct, it's very clearly outlined as to what those roles entail. Some of the other revisions that you'll see in the Code of Student Conduct that are highlighted would be the behavior examples and response examples. So these examples, again, provide clarity and communication as to what behaviors we're looking at. So for example, if we're looking at a behavior such as a disruption in the classroom, that is a behavior example that's highlighted. And along with that behavior example are some response examples that teachers in the classroom can use to address that behavior. The other piece that we're looking at are resources for students and families. We want to be able to empower our students and our families with resources and provide them with access to social, emotional, and mental health services. So that is another feature that you're going to see in our Code of Student Conduct revision section that has been highlighted. A link to the Wissahickon School District webpage also provides additional information on restorative practices. We know that our families have attended, some of them have attended our community conversations, but we also have new families coming in. So we wanted to make sure that we're providing common understanding of what we mean by restorative practices, as well as social and emotional learning. As we continue to move forward, you'll see that there's a link in place for our special education webpage for more information on special considerations for students with disabilities regarding behavior responses. We'll continue to actualize our classroom responses and make sure that we're working with our case managers very closely. The special consideration section, again, highlights deliberate and intentional actions that one can take. It also provides information for our families. The glossary of behavior examples, along with the glossary of behavior responses, provides us with common language to terms that we're using. This is important for us because we want to make sure that everyone is aware of what it is that we're talking about in terms of behaviors and what it is that we mean when we have these behavior examples or responses in place. So that common language and common understanding helps us to be proactive and preventative in the measures that we're taking. As we look at some additional goals behind our code of student conduct, and we continually ask ourselves during the process, our question as to why we're doing this, many of the factors that you see here answers that direct question. Helping students to take responsibility. The code of student conduct provisions allow us to really provide more ownership to students so that they can reflect on the behaviors that they are exemplifying, the behaviors that are disrupting, or the behaviors that are causing harm. Making students aware of the consequences is very important. You know, the scope of what we're doing here is to deter behavior from occurring. This behavior is one that we can teach and reteach. So making students aware of the consequences and giving them an opportunity to learn how to change the behavior. So oftentimes we've found with the research and also with some of the outcomes that students are repeating the same behaviors. So how do we break or disrupt that cycle of behavior and repetition? So one way to do that is to be very intentional behind the teaching of what it is that we're trying to attempt to do. So we teach reading, we teach math. We also want to be very intentional in teaching behavior. And so we're teaching students conflict resolution. We're teaching them how to build these skills, teaching them empathy and perspective taking, and enhancing their communication skills so they can be very articulate as to what I'm feeling, why I'm feeling this. And then when harm is caused, what can I do to make things right in my community? And so that ownership is very important. And it's essential in helping us to change behavior that we've been seeing that has really escalated to concerns. And so these are some of the things that we look at when we're focusing on our code of student conduct revision piece. Any questions?
I'll start off. So thank you first for the presentation. So one of the things you referenced was resources that we'd be providing to families for mental health services. I know just hearing from different families, that's very difficult or has been very difficult over the past year to access these types of services. So what are we doing? What sort of resources are we providing to our families?
So there's an entire webpage of different resources that extend from mental health resources to mobile crisis and so forth, so that parents can take actionable steps about those things that are most relevant and pertinent to their family. Having that webpage with the resources is essential, but also communicating to our families where they can find that information. So in the planning of these revisions, we were very intent on making sure that we were communicating with our families and our students. Here are the resources that are available for this. So the resources are very extensive. And they go from anywhere from students who may need additional help with anxiety to level resources for families for different reasons. So again, the other caveat to that is not just listing those resources, but providing our parents and guardians with knowledge of where they can go to get the resources and the benefit of those resources.
So this is basically like a list of providers, like if you're having these particular issues. Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, Steffi?
Thank you for your presentation. Curious for the section where you talk about the glossary of examples and responses, how is that kind of shared out to staff and the students? And, you know, where are we teaching this? How are we, like, how are they tapping into this?
Thank you for the question. So after we had the opportunity to revise the code of student conduct, we also engaged in a conversation around the communication implementation plan. Like, how are we communicating this information to our students, to our families, to our staff? And so we're going to use all venues to communicate this information. So for example, at our faculty meetings, when we have newsletters sent home, and even before then, staff and student meetings, we are going to be intentional in making sure that everyone's aware of the changes to the Code of Student Conduct. So we're deliberate in our practices around that piece. I appreciate the question because it allows me to extend on the part of, we didn't want this just to be a document that was revised and that was it, but it's a living document. So we want to make sure that we're very communicative in what we're saying. We're disseminating this information through many venues, and then we're providing opportunities for questions.
Anyone else have questions?
I have a question.
Sure, Deanne.
You talked about shifting the focus to teacher managed interventions. And I guess my question is, how are the teachers being supported in this? Because I feel like they already have a lot of responsibilities. And I know that they manage classrooms on a daily basis anyway, but what resources are we giving them to help with that?
Thank you for that question. So with our training that we've had in terms of looking at professional learning opportunities, one other piece is that we're focusing on restorative practice training. So we've looked at our secondary cohort. We'll continue with a secondary cohort and an elementary cohort. Along with that will be the support and ongoing conversations that we have with staff. So when we're looking at a teacher intervention, and let's say the teacher, the behavior example is disruption in the classroom. So that conversation with teachers during that faculty staff meeting would be, if that's the behavior disruption, here are some examples of things that you can do, such as having that conversation with the student, could be a warning, could be a call home from a parent. And for staff who may feel hesitant or may need additional help with that, then our leaders are available to help them through that piece too. So it's actually a modeling piece as well. So we're modeling behaviors, we're focusing on classroom management, and we're providing clear responses to those types of behaviors, along with the professional learning opportunities.
Other questions? Marshall?
Are we going to be disseminating this in a way that not only everybody in school will be aware of it, but everybody at home will be aware of any changes? And maybe it'll be an opportunity to really discuss the types of things that we could maybe head off before they get to the point of being either a disruption or a crisis, so that everybody understands not only that we have a code of conduct, that we're updating our code of conduct, and that we all expect to abide by that code of conduct in order to coexist in a meaningful way without having to maybe put it or pit it as, say, teacher or staff against student or family, but to make sure everybody is aware of it and understands it, and that this living document that you're talking about is something that everybody has a share in presenting, understanding, and maybe discussing with their own family, so that everybody's aware of what we expect.
Yes, thank you for that question. So we do have the Code of Student Conduct available online. So what's really important about that is that it's translatable. So you can have it online and it can be translated into various languages so that every person, every family has access to that. Along with that, to get to well, how do I know that it's there? It is, again, with our deliberate intention of communicating that to our families. We talked about different methods of having the website linked here so that they can go there and navigate those resources as well as having those deliberate conversations with our families. And a part of our student code of conduct is the integration of everyone's responsibility, and that includes our community. So how do we engage them? And that is to make sure that we're very transparent and that we've provided access to that. And so that website is playing one of those roles there for us.
Can we go a step further and maybe have that discussion in class, maybe at the beginning of the year, where the teachers present the code of conduct and say, this is the expectation we all have, and we don't want it to get to a point where it's negative behavior and negative issues, but so the students know at the outset what our code of conduct is, instead of having to just hear it from home and putting that burden maybe on families alone, maybe having it in class as well. And maybe that could, between the balance of in-class and family, it could reinforce one another.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, and it's actually a practice. So something that will be happening is that you'll have the administrative team and teachers that will also be communicating that information. And the way it's going to work is, in some instances, for example, I'll take the high school, they have recurring meetings, and so they're going to do it through a recording, but certain things are played at the same time, so it's reviewed with the students and then highlighted with the teachers. So that point is very important for us to make sure it is clearly given or disseminated, and that is that it will be something that's shared with the students. So the students are also a part of that communication piece.
Any other questions? No? All right, well, thank you so much again for the presentation.
Thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
All right, we'll move then on to our next presentation, which is the Bluebell Elementary School Expansion Alterations Project Update.
Thank you. I'd like to introduce Michael Bell with Breslin Architects. He's been here before. We're going to do an update of the schematic where we are with regard to Bluebell. Michael is part of the design team, which is Jerry Moore, Dewey Engineering, which is Arif Fazil, the cabinet members, and Angela Farlow. And the update is based on meetings with all of those folk and the township as well. And he'll tell us where we are and some of the next steps.
All right. Thank you, everyone. It's wonderful to be here again. I believe the last time I was here, we were all looking forward to summer, and it seems like in the blink of an eye, we're getting ready for a new school year. But it's great to be here again. So just want to start talking a little bit about where we are in the process. So back in the spring, we went through the study and concept design. We looked at numerous options, vetted them with the administration, the school board, got a lot of great feedback that I think has kind of brought us to where we are. Tonight, we're here to talk about, we're sort of at the end of the schematic design phase. So at that, we're really at this point in the process, we're just refining the floor plan, refining the site layout, looking at just room sizes, room adjacencies, what spaces are going into the building. The next phase we're moving into is design development. In that phase, we're going to be meeting with staff, principals, administration, and really looking at each space, looking at the equipment, the casework, the furniture, and how are these spaces actually going to be used. So in the design development phase, we're going to sort of really dive into that level of detail, as well as talk about building systems, HVAC, electrical, etc. We're hoping to complete that phase by the end of October. At that point, we will be moving into the construction documents phase, starting to prepare those construction documents, as well as also preparing for the Act 34 hearing. The Act 34 hearing, we're looking at for December. And then ultimately the construction documents phase will take us out to March, when we expect to hopefully put this project out to bid. So this is a plan you've seen before. So this is the existing site plan of Bluebell. And I think a couple of things just to point out here is, the Symphony Lane, all traffic to the school enters off Symphony Lane. There's currently 2 loops in front of the school, one for buses, one for vehicles. There is a lot of congestion there. The school has a wonderful playground space between the school and out towards Skipack Pike. And then behind the school is the existing transportation facility. So with the new plan, again, after going through numerous options, the new addition to the school is located along the back of the school. So there's numerous purposes there. One is it ties all 4 of those classroom wings together. So I think one, it helps sort of secure the perimeter of the school a little more, as well as tying all those classroom wings together just improves the flow of students within the building significantly. From a traffic flow standpoint, this plan just keeps all the vehicular traffic in front of the school. And now in back of the school, a separate bus loop has been created for the buses. So now those 2 traffic flows have been completely separated to alleviate congestion. The playground has been kept as it is. Again, with a very nice space, mature trees. So we've kept that. We are looking to use some of the playground here. This existing paved area is overflow parking for large events. That would be gated off, so it would only be open for those events. Most of the time, it would still be used as a playground as it's used today. And the transportation facility, we are using some of that existing transportation facility for parking for the school, as well as for service. So to compensate for the loss of some of the bus parking here, we're increasing the bus lot back at the end of the existing lot up in this area. So this is the floor plan of the existing Bluebell Elementary. I think a couple of key things is with the addition of the multi-purpose space. I'm trying to find my cursor here. We are looking to the cafeteria and kitchen function, as well as the gym phys ed function will move to the new addition with the multi-purpose room. So those are spaces that we are looking at repurposing in the existing building. So with the new floor plan, in the addition, we have off of the bus loop, we have a set of stairs and a ramp bringing you up to a new entrance here. So very convenient access from the bus loop for the students right into the building. The multi-purpose room, stage, kitchen, serving area is really a carbon copy of what's been recently completed at Stony Creek to provide that parity between the schools. I think one of the key differences you'll see in this option from maybe some of the options we had looked at back in the spring was in some of those earlier options, we were looking at adding 4 classrooms sort of opposite the kindergarten rooms on the end here. After really looking at it, talking it through with the instruction manager, really deemed it that it would be more efficient, simplify phasing, and really improve the constructability to bring all these classrooms together in one addition, as opposed to 2 separate additions. So you'll see here now we have a double loaded corridor. As part of this, as part of this option, we were able to integrate an open large group work area. I think that could provide a lot of flexibility for the district. It can be used for small group work, large group work, so sort of a flexible collaboration space. Also, its location relative to the multi-purpose room, it also can support events in the multi-purpose room. So if you're having a big choral event or a big band event, and the PTA is doing a basket raffle or something like that, you have space outside of the multi-purpose room to support those kinds of activities. So I think that brings a lot of flexibility. One of the things we've heard as we've talked with the administration staff is a need for small group space in the building. So we've taken 2 of the classrooms in this addition. So these 2 classrooms here, and they're being built. They can be used as a regular classroom, but we're putting folding partitions in those 2 rooms that provide the district the ability to use those as 4 small group rooms. And that's something we see in schools from this time period. As in our current education, we need more and more small group spaces needed for all the specialized instruction, the one-on-one instruction, all the support services that are provided by school districts these days. And these schools that were built in the 50s and 60s inherently don't have those spaces. So small group spaces is always greatly needed. So that's the addition. We are looking at 3 of the classrooms in the addition. I know we talked, again, the concept phase about some alternate bids. So as part of this project right now, we're looking at the 3 classrooms in the upper right as an alternate bid. So they will be in the construction bids, but there will be a deduct alternate to delete them should the district decide to do so if the bidding numbers come in favorably. For the renovated areas, the cafeteria, existing cafeteria kitchen area. Right now, the current proposed use for that space is to provide a larger conference space for the school, a place where large enough to have their IEP meetings. It's located right off the main entrance for easy access, so you don't have to bring people through the school. And then we are looking at providing 2 emotional support rooms and a special education room that are needed, as well as another small group space. Currently, the existing gym area in the center here, we're just looking at dividing that up into 3 instructional spaces. But again, those three spaces would be a deduct alternate, bids come in favorable, and the district decides not to proceed with that work, that could be removed from the contract. So now the really exciting part. So this is a concept rendering of what we think that entrance at the bus loop could start to look like. And so this would be, let me back up here. So this would be right outside the multi-purpose room, up in the top left corner here, where you see the set of steps and the ramp coming up to the building. Mouse working. So up in this area. So this rendering is sort of standing here looking at that new entrance. But we see, doing something that complements the existing building. So we would look to try and match the brick on the existing school. Again, being that this is going to be a primary loading and unloading for students, a nice stairway to bring students into the building. Also a wonderful way to welcome people for those events that are happening in the multi-purpose room for community use. And then here's an aerial view showing the new parking area behind the building. And again, you can see the stair coming into the new entrance, the ramp leading up to that entrance. And just like at Stony Creek, we're looking to bring a lot of natural light into that multi-purpose room. So there would be clear story windows on both sides of it to bring that light in. Further in the back of this rendering, you can see the classrooms. Again, we're looking at, doing a lot of windows in those new classrooms to bring a lot of natural light into those spaces to make them very, exciting teaching spaces. So any questions?
Just before we take questions, I just want to accent the actual height of that is the same generally as Stony Creek. The reason that it seems bigger is because there is a fairly significant drop off from the front of where Bluebell is sort of to the back now. So we have to sort of lift it up so that we're going to keep it all on one level so that we don't have any steps for ADA, ramps, or otherwise. It's just going to sort of unify the building on one level. So the back is going to be a little bit higher, which is also why those stairs seem sort of more imposing. If we were just going up to the regular ground level, it would be a little bit easier. But because we were also taking into account a dropping off of the back area, the stairs and the entire site sort of just seems a little bit higher. I also wanted to mention, I didn't mention that we had conversations with Kelly Heim-McCluskey, who is our Director of Special Education. But Jerry and I met with her in order to give feedback to the architect with regard to hopefully making those rooms exactly what we need for the future for special education. So with that, can we please have some questions?
So Wade, my question is probably better for you. Those multi-purpose spaces that are part of the alternate bids, if we don't actually go forward with the alternate bid, what is going to happen with those spaces? Like right now at the middle school, we have the pool space that's unused. Like we're adding on new space, but then we're going to have this space that's still there. Do we have a plan for what we're going to do with it?
Apologize. Say it's a very, very positive bidding environment when we bid it for whatever reason. The hope is that we would potentially be able to have a conversation with the board about whether or not we proceed with the 3 classrooms in the upper right-hand area. In the gymnasium, it's like that. We would also have a conversation about, should we convert these to classrooms or should we just leave that as an open gym space? Frankly, Dr. Crisfield has had a discussion as well about some of the positives that we would have. It's just having an ancillary space for kids to blow off steam or whatever. And if we needed it into the future, we would be able to convert it into classrooms at that point in time. So it'd sort of be a cost deferral and then an evaluation into the future. And truthfully, sort of like the middle school, we now do see the need for the classrooms at the middle school. So now we're making it into classrooms. And if Bluebell grew beyond that, which we think we're looking at right now, it would be able to be converted in the future.
Okay, thank you. Other questions?
Is there a plan for like some of the other existing classrooms to get a makeover as well? Like maybe some tile or paint or something?
So on Jerry's 5-year list, I'm pretty positive, I think it's 2 years from now, there's an HVAC project, much like at Stony, where we'll be going to that. Is it 2 years, Jerry? So that would be something that we would be bringing forward and would increase the, the general air quality and circulation in the classroom. But just like at Stony, many of the classrooms that exist are in very, very good condition, which is why, there's been not a discussion about knocking the whole thing in and starting again. The classrooms are in good shape. The structure of the building is in good shape. A couple years from now, we'll do an HVAC project, but generally, we're not going to be doing ceiling lighting, exterior flooring in the classroom, because frankly, a lot of that stuff has been done.
Other questions?
Well, I just have one more. I counted, I think, 9 new classrooms and then the conversion into like for the emotional support. Is that about what you think we need, or hopefully a little more than you think we need right now?
Yeah, I think it's more than what we need from the standpoint of what we're projecting based on enrollment increases. Frankly, Bluebell, if we were going to have extra capacity at one of our schools, it's probably not a bad idea to have it at Bluebell based on some of the properties that currently are within the Bluebell boundaries. They could potentially become, kids somewhere down the road. But again, if we have positive bids, potential would be we have a discussion with the board about not creating those 3 classrooms in the upper right-hand side.
Other questions? All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, so we will now move on to our first public comment period. And I'll just remind everyone that we allow a maximum of 5 speakers on a particular topic. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. It's not the board's practice to engage in dialogue with speakers, and when appropriate, we will follow up with a response on our website. So we have 1 person registered in person, and that's Carmina Taylor.
Just would like some clarity on the security positions. I know you probably won't answer, but do the director and assistant director of security, are they overseeing the safety team that's in the high school, or is that different? And are you still having the safety team at the high school? So can that be the question to be answered? Or when you make your presentation, definitely make the distinction of clarity and where that is housed of, since that's a new position. Thank you.
Thanks, Carmina. Katie, is there anyone registered online?
There are no speakers on Zoom.
Okay, that concludes our first public comment period. We'll now move on to the board president report. This evening, I have no informational items. Under action items, I do have the approval of resolution number W1222, emergency declaration pursuant to section 520.1 of the Pennsylvania School Code per document 6-1. Can I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
All right, the motion's been made and seconded. Are there any questions or comments?
Just to clarify, so this is, if I recall, and maybe Jim, you can give some specifics on this. This has to do with virtual instruction days as an alternative to snow days. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. At the beginning of the pandemic, it was necessary to have this permission issued statewide to all districts. Many were going fully virtual, some were going hybrid. And this is still a vestige of that. Usually in a normal year, you have to apply to the PDE with a very comprehensive plan as to how you're going to accomplish virtual instruction should you need to. I think my guess is for one more year, this one, they're just gonna have a blanket one that we just have to pass. So I wouldn't anticipate the need for that, except for that maybe, remember last year we had one weather day that we used for virtual. If we have excess number of weather days in any given year, this would be a nice option. But we are not doing away with the traditional, much beloved snow days. This is just supplemental to that.
Yeah, and so that's just the one piece I wanted to clarify. This does not mean that we're getting rid of snow days. We still have
That-
snow days built into
Absolutely.
the calendar, but it gives us the
Yes.
option to take a virtual day.
Right.
If we feel that we need to do it during the school year.
Any other questions or comments? All right, seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you, motion passes. Next, we'll have our superintendent report. Jim?
Thank you. The first item on the informational items is an update on school opening. And I was all set to highlight all of the neat things that are going on planning wise and in the buildings. And Jerry and his buildings and grounds crew got things looking great. We're up ready to go Monday. And then we had our infinite campus choke point hit us again today. This is something that we are going to learn from. I'd like to make it clear that we are very aware of how sensitive it is to get teacher assignments and pod assignments and everything like that into the hands of students and families when we say we're going to. And we said we're going to do it today, 5, and we did. The reason we didn't was our system got completely overwhelmed with traffic. Now, there's no way for us to test this ahead of time. Now we know we can't have everybody hit it at once. What happened was people were going to Infinite Campus and not leaving, just hitting refresh. And we just didn't have the capacity in our servers to handle all of that traffic all at once. So we'll learn from that. What we're going to do for this current year is we'll release everything at 3 a.m. this morning. So if somebody wants to sit online and refresh at 3, they're welcome to. Our guess is that fewer people will. And then they'll be rolled out early tomorrow morning or whenever people want to access them. This is not ideal. We're sorry for the inconvenience. We know the families are looking forward to getting that information today. And we are Dr. Dewan's going to assemble her team to figure out a better solution moving forward. But the solution won't be what we tried earlier and failed. That won't work technology-wise. We have to come up with something different. And if we have to go to old school Pony Express, United States Postal Service, we will. I don't think that's a good idea, so we'll figure something else out. And we'll just learn from this and get better.
So I heard from some parents they were able to find this information on Clever or Prodigy, but that was then shut down also.
Yes, the clever, so we say hack, was not intentional. It was very clever on the part of somebody to figure that out. And we were not aware of that hole until somebody told us about it. And then we decided it wasn't fair to have some people access and some people not. So we did shut down Clever.
Do you think that like just putting it out overnight on Sunday and then letting people look at it when they want to on Monday is a good solution? Because yeah, if you say, hey, everyone, it's going to be on at 5 p.m., guess how many people are logging on at 5 p.m.?
We'll figure something else out. This year, we want to get it out because people were expecting it today. And in the future, we'll figure something like that out so that really whatever we figure out, the concept is to not have all the traffic hit our servers at once. And so we'll figure out a solution.
Many kids don't understand the concept of today is the day you're getting your teacher assignments, but not till dinner. So, and now not till you're asleep. So it was
Right.
hard.
We are aware of that, and by no means belittling that. It's a very real thing. We know that. The next thing on my list of informational items is just to review the draft list of goals and priorities that we tossed around initially at our retreat. And nothing is open for a vote approval tonight. I just want to get some more feedback from the board. Then the next set of meetings in September, October, we'll finalize these. Our priority area of academic achievements, the goal is to finish off our process of examining options for later school start and end times. We've begun that. Last year was year one. It was more of the investigation stage. This existing year will be more of the presentation and action stage. Concept is to finalize some concrete options for people to chew on the next month or two and present them all in multiple public meetings and board meetings starting in November. And remember, we need the board to decide something in early February, so we have enough time to make the adjustments for the coming September 2023. That's really just year 2 of a 2-year goal. District goal 2 in the priority area of racial equity, we wanted to create a data dashboard of sorts on the district website that tracks more frequently than we have been in the past indicators of how we're doing in terms of eliminating equity indicator or equity disparities, such as, say, enrollment in special education, gifted, discipline numbers, a sense of belongingness. So we don't have those indicators. We haven't presented those indicators in the past in a forum other than the Racial Equity Oversight Committee, which did get some good introduction. What our thought was to put them where everyone can see them and then update them more regularly than once a year. The goal for priority number 3, opportunity and learning gap, is similar in that we'll create a data dashboard for learning indicators. Now, we have had those in place and we have measured those and shared those out, but only once a year, every year in January in the annual report. And the board's consensus was they would prefer a more regular look at these things, not necessarily every indicator every month, but just not one big data dump in January and then wait again 12 months before you get it again. So if we set up a data dashboard that has regular updates, say quarterly, on things, and you remember these indicators do exist. They're things like grade point average, how you did in the PSSA, what your reading level is in grade 3, math fact, mastery in grade 4, things that we can measure and we have been measuring. The concept is to put them up on the website so everybody can see them. In the priority area of value, the thought was to continue doing what we did tonight, which was refine the plan for addressing the enrollment increase in Bluebell. And that was a good step towards that. In priority area and communication, there's 2 goals. 5A is to finish off that 3-year goal of the district's policy manual update. And we have a plan in place to regularly meet and do all that over the course of this school year. That'll be year 3 of 3 for that one. And then also 5B is to finish that 2-year goal of the district's website redesign. Made some progress towards that last year, and the concept is to finish that off this year and have it in place, up and running, say come spring. So with those were what we tossed around in the retreat, but we can adapt or change or however the board would like. Like I say, there's no action tonight, just a conversation.
So on these data dashboards that we're creating for racial equity and the opportunity learning gap, can we not just put the data points, but also include some description so that someone that's looking at this data has an understanding of what it actually reflects?
Yes. Good idea. Yeah, we'll describe the variables.
Perfect. Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
And do we have an idea of the cadence of these updates for these dashboards?
No, what we're going to do is our thought was quarterly. So let's say like the PSAT data, that's only available once a year anyway.
Sure.
GPA data could be available on a more regular basis. Math fact mastery, as an example, might be a little more. It just kind of depends on the indicator.
Sure.
But much more than once a year all together in January.
Yeah. And are they, I mean, I understand that some of these things might be yearly, but are there anything else that we can look at that may be trackable in a more interim basis so that we're not waiting a full year to see kind of that change? So I don't expect that answer right now, but just food for thought, you know.
Some of them are. I think that's a good goal to have, and we want that. I'll throw it out there. Reading level in grade 3. That's not a standardized test. That's something we administer internally, and maybe 2 or 3 times a year that could be up there. we want to try to find the right balance of having these dashboards not cluttered with too much information, but on the other hand, more regular than yearly.
And Jim, kind of to build off of Zephy's point, is that if you look at, let's say PSSA test results, for example, I mean, they do, and we administer the test once a year, and then we get the data. We tend to get the data several months after the test was administered. So by the time we see it, it's sort of like after the fact and maybe too late to really do much about it. But leading up to the administration of the PSSA throughout the school year, teachers are doing like regular assessments of students on, let's say, like reading, for example. And based on that, we can, and how the trend is, we can get a sense of how we're likely to do overall on the PSSA results later. So at least it would give us as a board and also for the community, you know, a sense of like how things are progressing, right? And maybe like an advanced look at how we are likely to perform overall on the standardized statewide tests that come later in the year, but we don't find out until months afterwards. So I think something like that. So this, it's like kind of the difference between a lagging indicator like PSSA test results versus a leading indicator like reading benchmark assessments.
Definitely, and you recall we've injected the last couple of years a measure of, or try to find indicators for growth, not just static achievement. So one of the best things, instruments we have for that is the MAP test, which is leading indicator A, and also it measures growth from 6 months ago. And both those things are very handy.
And one more follow-up thought, Jim. I see that belongingness is under the racial equity, but in my humble opinion, I feel like that should be for everybody. So would it be more appropriate to put it under our opportunity and learning gap? Because that's something that we want to ensure that everybody has that kind of opportunity. Just a thought.
I think we'll, if it's, whether it goes here or there, what we will definitely include data from everybody. So that if, even though it's, well, racial equity, but we'll see how different sections of the student body feel about this. And we won't suppress any of the data.
And for the belonging aspect, are we going to be listing out like the different questions that were asked of our students, or how are we exactly going to be tracking?
I would say we have to figure that out. You want to, we have a link to the survey itself, but is there a bottom line score something, or what do you think about that?
We are still going to need time to explore that in terms of what the data looks like that we're posting on the website. Ultimately, what we want to see is, of course, growth toward all students feeling that sense of belonging. And so we'll work with our district equity planning committee to identify what's the best way to present that data so that we can be tracking to see that we're moving toward higher levels of sense of belonging for all students. That's the ultimate goal.
Any other questions or comments, Dan?
This is about communication though. I like the idea of redesigning the website and know we're working toward that. But I would love to see, and I have told this to you already, Jim, at some sort of main point of communication. Because I feel like right now it's like very piecemeal. Like there's the website and then you get some stuff on social media and some buildings send out stuff or whatever. But like a district communication, like some other districts have like a SMORE, and I don't know how often that goes out. Maybe it's weekly, maybe it's monthly. I don't know. I'd have to look into it. But I just feel like there's like a better way of communicating what we want to communicate to families. I'd like to see, I think social media is fine, but I'd like to also see us step out of parents having to be on social media to get the information they need.
Yeah. Maybe we can, I know we're looking into something like SMORE or that kind of concept. Maybe we can add that to the redesign of their website to include X.
Yeah, I think the website's important, but I don't know like how often I browse websites, right? Like I feel like that's not how people get.
No, definitely not. It's just a depository, really. I think we're moving towards having it be a place where things reside, but not where people go unless they are purposely looking for X.
And if I could just build on that, you know, to me, communication should be both push and pull. And we're not really encompassing that in this goal. So would like us to rethink or kind of tweak that a little bit more. And it's a little bit more digitally kind of leaning. And we know that not everybody leans to digital, right? So I do, but not everybody. So if we could think about that, I think that would be helpful.
Agreed. And also what we know is that not everyone leans towards social media. Same sort of thing. That's digital, but people might prefer other digital. So we need to try to hit everybody's preferences and continue the opportunity to communicate as often as possible. So either a common platform or maybe some sort of non-digital. I'm not sure what that looks like, but we can add those elements to the.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not opposed to some old school traditional ways to communicate too.
Nothing wrong. Postage stamps forever. Cost the same now as they will in 5 years, I hope. But the post office is still around. I don't know.
Any other questions or comments?
Thank you for that. The next information item I have is an update on our district's health and safety plan. Districts are required to review their health and safety plan every 6 months by the federal government. And the good news is our existing health and safety plan is okay as it is. And the reason that is the case is that we explicitly linked ourselves to Office of Public Health and CDC. Back when it was last revised in the spring. So the plan itself doesn't have to be changed, but I did want to take a good bit of time tonight to share with everybody a summary of the new Office of Public Health recommendations.
Are we currently online?
Oh, maybe not.
Are we still recording, Katie?
Yes, yes, okay. So we will continue, as our health and safety plan says, we'll continue to follow the Office of Public Health recommendations. And then I should note, and you all heard this probably, that the Office of Public Health is explicitly aligned closely to the updated CDC recommendations. So much of what I'm going to share with you tonight is a flow through from CDC to OPH to us. And remember, we are linked more specifically, Office of Public Health, they're in our county and they have jurisdiction over school districts. Now, having said that, summary of their recommendations, generally they are moving towards treating COVID-19 like other respiratory diseases. And that is to emphasize everyday sanitary precautions, emphasize the usefulness of vaccines, emphasize the concept of staying home when you're sick, etc. That's what we have done for years with things like the flu, other respiratory diseases. Now, if somebody is COVID-19 positive, Office of Public Health will strongly recommend that person isolate for days 1 to 5, meaning stay home, and then strongly recommend that person wear a mask for days 6 to 10. Please note, districts across the county are moving away from policing any of this. We're not going to police this. We don't have this. We don't have the person power anymore to do that. Compliance with these recommendations are voluntary across the county now. I think a key here is we're moving to a paradigm of personal responsibility away from institutional responsibility. It's just, and that's what the CDC is doing, what the Office of Public Health is doing, and that's what in turn schools are doing. So for some details, not going into all details tonight, no more quarantining. If you're exposed to somebody with COVID, it's recommended that you wear a mask for 10 days. Again, we're not going to police that. No more test or mask to stay. No more contact tracing. No more letters or emails going home with case counts. We won't have that data anyway. We won't be able to track it reliably on the district website. The Office of Public Health is no longer requiring districts to report case counts to them. If a district and/or the Office of Public Health perceives an outbreak, which is not defined anywhere on purpose by them, of this or any other respiratory disease, including like a flu outbreak, like we have in the past, the district will consult with the Office of Public Health and supplemental preventative measures may be implemented as needed at that time. Districts, and we as well will return to our what we call standard district sick policies, not going to distinguish between various respiratory illnesses. If you're sick, if you're out, either student or staff, you have to be out, you're accounted for as sick day. And really a key is if you're not feeling well, This is no different from 10, 20, 50 years ago. Please stay home. If symptoms develop while at school, we won't know what kind of symptoms they are, but we will send the person home, just like we always have. It's required now, like it always has, that you return to school only after 24 hours of fever-free without a few assistance of Tylenol or whatever. That's the same way it's been for years. It's recommended that you isolate or mask as per the CDC recommendations that we spoke of earlier, but we're not going to, again, it's not required. And a doctor's note would be required on day 3 of being sick as usual. The COVID piece, if you're going to be out day 4 and 5, also, will work with you on that. But basically back to the way we have handled being out sick in the past. Masking, personal choice. Any person is welcome to wear one. Any person is also welcome to not wear one. This is absent of a health agency directive. We'll cross that bridge if and when we get there. There will be no shaming or bullying either way, and that's not tolerated. And anybody is going to be encouraged to report immediately any evidence to the contrary. Both that includes staff and students. Communications on all of this, we're going to get something out to staff likely within 24 hours, I think, on what we summarized here, maybe 48 hours. That will be Danielle's bailiwick. I'll get something out to the community, families and caregivers within 24 to 48 hours. A little wiggle room, not promising 5 p.m. Just get it out there when I can get it out there, but very soon, within 48 hours. And then to end this discussion about health and safety plan, what is not included in any of this is the recent discussion about monkeypox. That's a very serious, completely different matter. It's not respiratory. It's more like the MRSA, contagious diseases. And the Office of Public Health has some very specific resources and information on how to handle that, essentially, like we do MRSA. So that's a real quick and dirty summary of the changes that we'll communicate out. And I'm happy to take any, there's nothing to vote on this tonight, but I'm happy to take any questions from the board, should there be any.
Stephanie?
Thanks for that update, Jim. One clarifying question. I'm glad that we don't have to do contact tracing. I'm sure that's a relief. But do we not do communication to the classroom, like, you know, when someone has strep or whatever, that notice will go out either?
Correct. This will be handled like a respiratory disease. And so whereas in the past, we hadn't done that for flu, if Johnny's out because he has the flu, we did not send letters home. And we will not, and we never, of course, we never identified Johnny, but we'd never send a letter home and say one person in class 4
No,
is.
understood.
So we won't be doing that with this as well. Part of the problem is we're not going to require people to report to us if they've tested positive. Many people won't bother testing. They'll just assume that they're sick. And so they'll be home and we won't know for sure.
But if the family divulges that information, we don't feel obligated to report that?
We're not obligated by anything the Office of Public Health says. We're not obligated. We don't report it to them.
Understood. It's not about reporting it to them. It's about reporting it to the classroom families.
We aren't planning on it. If we did that, I think we'd run the risk of people thinking that with no letter home this week, there's no cases in their class. And it's just not, we wouldn't be able to accurately say that.
True. But that's not the point. When you have that information and you do not share it, it is a bit of a different situation. In fact, I think it's very different when you know the information and you're not sharing it out.
Would you want to extend that beyond COVID or just keep it at COVID?
Keep it at COVID.
We certainly could. I mean, it's.
Yeah, I would say the same would hold true like for strep. Like we may not know somebody in the class is strep, but when we find out, we would share that information. Like any of the things we report out to the classroom, we wouldn't know unless somebody reported it. Somebody could have something and not report it.
I know, Michelle, you're with us tonight, and I would be interested in the case of strep. If one student in the class has strep, let's take this away from COVID, let's say 5 years ago. And we reported that, and it's the only student out absent. does that divulge information about that student's health condition?
If it depends upon what kind of, if we're identifying the student's name, what kind of information we're providing. We're just saying that one student is out sick with strep.
Right.
And I don't think that that's divulged. It would be an improper divulging of students' information.
Okay, so we could say that we'll send notices home if strep occurs or if COVID occurs that we know of, not if flu occurs.
You could do that if you want.
That's sort of what you're suggesting, right?
Yeah, I would think if we could just add that to the list of diseases that we report out to families.
But I just want to. I'm just worried that people think that's the complete list, and it's not. It's just something we know, and we'll share it. And then there's no problem sharing it. It's just that I don't want people to think that there's only one. I mean, they'll have to just take it for whatever, and they can use it or not, however they see fit.
Exactly. But again, I'm emphasizing on the other side of this, where if we have the information and we're not sharing it out, I think that is the problem.
Right.
So that's why I think we need to share, if we know.
Right.
Oh, you know, and as you said, people could take that information or leave it.
Are there other, I mean, maybe okay, so the COVID is what we're talking about here. We always do with strep anyway, but not flu. And we'll just have COVID be a standalone thing that's important to share out when we have the information.
Isn't it like a checklist? Like, I feel like I've gotten those notes home before and it's just like 6 or 7 different things. And then there's like a check mark next to the one.
I mean,
that
we'll have to
applies.
adapt that. We can.
Okay.
I mean,
I
we
just
might
have a
need to
question.
add polio and monkeypox to that list potentially.
I
And
would
this
assume
is,
so.
this is the question I have. At what point are we going to cut this off if somebody has a particular issue that is of concern to them and they say, could you please send out notice when this occurs? I think we're creating a slippery slope of if we're not following the guidelines of the OPS or the CDC and what they require. I don't know why we would go beyond that, because I think you're just creating one, maybe concern when you don't need to, and number two, where does it end if somebody says, well, I really want you to report on this because my child has, say, a respiratory condition or some other neurological condition. And I don't know, maybe legally that could be an issue as well. So instead of saying, well, let's just add monkeypox today or COVID today, maybe we need to figure out, one, what's allowable, and two, where does it end? Because if somebody gets wind of that and they're going to say, well, you did it for this one, I want this ailment added to the list as well. And I'm not sure we're in the business of creating that kind of information, number one, and potential concern.
Well, the current
Marcia,
list that we have, where did that list come from? Is that something that the state gives to us that you have to report on these particular illnesses, or do we make up that list?
I'm almost positive I can confirm this, that that's an OPH code. I'll take using the whooping cough. That's one that I think is explicitly called out. But if some other agency somewhere requires us to do that, then of course we will comply. What we're talking about here is going beyond what we're required to, because we have this information, and the thought would be, if we have it, we should share it. But I'm not saying that that's a good or bad idea. I'm just saying that that's my understanding of your thought, Zephy.
Yeah.
I agree with Zephy, because we can, Marshall, we're still going by the guidelines. We're not changing how we're dealing with it. We're simply sharing information if you have it, and that's important to some people. Like, it is important to me that I don't constantly get reinfected with COVID because of my health conditions. So, I mean, I think, like, you know, we can say, oh, well, you don't have to wear a mask, and oh, well, you don't have to do this or that. If, like, you're exposed, you don't have to tell us, you don't have to test, you don't even have to stay home anymore. But, like, that's putting other people at risk. And, like, now we're just depending on people to do the right thing. And if they're going to share that information, I would like to know that information. And I think a lot of families feel the same way as me.
But that's the whole point. That is of significance to you specifically, which I understand, and it's of concern to you, but there are lots of things that are a concern to a lot of people. And where do we draw that line?
Marshall,
I'm not having an argument about it. I'm simply saying, I think that if you're going to create a list, you're opening yourself up to a line in the sand that you haven't created. So I'm not against making sure that we ensure that everybody feels comfortable. I'm not against making sure that everybody gets the information that they need. What I'm concerned about is, are we doing something above and beyond what we're required to do? And then it becomes a problem for, you know, a whole host of things that are maybe nursing staff wasn't prepared to have to deal with. I don't know where it goes. I'm just raising the issue of, I'm not saying you don't have a concern, you don't have a right, and you have every right to be. I'm saying there are different issues to be determined with this. And I'd like to hear more information about what we're required to do, what we've done in the past, and maybe where we should go with this based on what our health professionals say inside the schools, and maybe what our community health organizations say in that regard.
I think any highly contagious virus that has caused a global pandemic could be put on that list. I think that would be like, as a health professional, I'm saying yes.
Okay, so can you look into this further, Jim, to see if that's something, like maybe talk to our nursing staff, see what their thoughts are.
I can. I'm very glad I gave myself 48 hours to get something out, because this will take a little bit of time.
Top of 72.
What we might do is I might just get something out saying reporting protocols are still on, or being decided or something. And we'll get that information about what is required to be reported on, maybe a list of things that what could be reported on, to see where the two match up.
Thanks, Jim. Okay, you have some action items. Oh, were there any other questions or comments?
Just one other thing, for families who are still concerned, can they go to their, I know we're dropping a lot of distancing and other precautions that we previously had in place. Families that have concerns, should they be directed to their principal and their teacher to work out a plan if their child is at high risk? I don't want to forget about people that still must take precautions for health reasons.
Certainly. And I think the first step would be teacher, but the teacher will then quickly go to principal to consult. And we're in this for all the right reasons, I'd say. And the reasons are to make students and staff comfortable about being in the building and about learning.
Any other
Jim,
comments?
can you share if there'll be any requirements for busing? How we handle school buses, transportation?
Those the masking requirements went out once the federal government took them out, and I'm not aware of, Paul, any measures on public transportation, which includes school buses.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions on the health and safety plan? All right, then we'll move on to action items.
Okay. Thank you. There are 6 action items that we need to address tonight. The first is approval of a revised calendar for this coming school year, the one that starts Monday, by the way, that will have 2 additional early dismissal days as per the recently approved collective bargaining agreement. One additional one in December, right before the winter break, and one in February before the long President's Day weekend break. The next 3 items go together. They're security related. There's a new job description for a position called the Director of Security. That's what we were talking about a little bit earlier. That person will help with the supervision of the new high school security team, or safety security specialists, but won't necessarily directly oversee them. That job will fall to the high school principal. But everything related to building security would fall under the purview of this new Director of Security. I'm suggesting it be a part-time position, about half, 50%. We have all of these things covered now in some fashion, but in my opinion, they are currently too distributed, and they could be much better centrally located. This director would be here in central office, report directly to me, and then would go out to schools all the time. Person would be very, very familiar, expert in school security. This would be more on the hard tactical side of things, keeping the current school safety and security coordinator, which is a stipend. That's actually an educator who fills that, one of our administrators, for the education side of things. I would not envision this school Director of Security to be an educator. wouldn't mind at all if he or she was, but I would envision this person most likely to come from law enforcement or maybe the military or both, and be more on the tactical side of things. So that's 2. 3 is then the board's approval to create that position so we can go advertise and hopefully hire mid-year. And remember, this position we believe we can pay for at least for 2 years with the security grant. And then after that, the budget would have to absorb that person's salary. Again, it's like a half-time administrative salary, I would envision. I don't know, the ballpark, I was using number 50,000, but it could be slightly more or less. And then number 3 is adjusting that coordinator's stipend to reflect the fact that there will be a director of security. And so now currently Jim Kelly, as you recall, our assistant principal at the high school, is our coordinator. That position required by the state, it would still exist. And he would continue to provide the educator's perspective on security matters, which I think is a good, at least for a couple of years, just to see how things shake out. So those are 2, 3, and 4. 5 and 6 go together. Those are amendments to existing employment contracts. One is for Dr. Dewan. It's not a new contract, it's just amendment of year 2, and then her second amendment rather, and then Ms. Hayes' first amendment to her existing contract. Those are annual events. So with that, I'll maybe ask for a motion to approve items 7B 1 through 6, and then we can discuss.
Sure. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, the motion's been made and seconded. Questions and comments. So Jim, I wanted to start off. I have a question. So the director of security and the school safety and security coordinator. I guess my concern is, will there be overlap in their positions? How will they know whose responsibility is what? So there's no, like, I thought it was his responsibility or hers. So how are we going to address that?
Very, very good question. Gave a lot of thought to that in the creation of this new description, plus in the revision of the coordinator description. For a year or 2, they're both reporting to me. I can envision the future, the coordinator reporting to the director and then having it be clear. I'll be the one initially. I tried to craft them such that things are the coordinator assists in logistical, tactical things, while is more responsible for things like the safe school meetings and annual report to the board. And the director of security would be in charge of things like, I'll put one out there, ensuring the what we call a go bag in each front office is there, staffed, or fully stocked and ready to go, and the principal knows what to do with that go bag. Hard for the assistant principal at the high school to go over to Bluebell or Stony to get that accomplished.
And security seems like such an important thing for our schools to have. Why are we doing just a part-time? Why not a full-time position?
I believe I've had experience with this in a different district with part-time, and the nature of this is such that part-time is enough. What might be modified is if it's every day for half a day, if it's 2.5 days a week, we need to be flexible on that part. So the actual hours will be, say, 50%, but the work day will be cleared through me, and I'll confer with the principals, see what the best arrangement is. If all of our drills are in the morning, for example, then we need the person there. The person would absolutely go there, meet the local law enforcement, be able to talk their language, be able to observe how things went. We'll be able to get the feedback from local officers and then make sure that feedback's implemented in the future at that school. And if that happens in the morning, fine. If it happens in the afternoon, that's fine too. The person will be expected to be on call 24/7, just like the nature of security would suggest. And the person will be an administrator. So all administrators are expected to have their cell phones, and if we need them, we call.
And we don't think we'll have difficulty filling a part-time position?
I don't know until we advertise. I'll be able to answer that better. I have a feeling we won't, because feeling it'll be somebody who has enough experience in this field that maybe they have had a career somewhere else already, and they'll be able to apply that knowledge and expertise here in a supplemental, like almost like not post-retirement, but second career thing.
Okay. Other questions and comments?
Yeah, I guess I'm also struggling a little bit with this part-time concept. And I guess we'll just see how it plays out, but you can't plan your breach.
No.
You can't plan your crisis.
No.
So if this is a part-time job and this person gets 4 calls between Monday and Wednesday, does that mean we have no coverage Thursday and Friday? Like, I guess in my head, I'm not really understanding this
Okay.
construct.
So this person would not be the first responder. This person would not be armed. This person is not a law enforcement. So what this person's job would be is to prepare that school for should a breach occur, and to be the liaison with local law enforcement. I would expect the person to, if a breach occurred on off hours, to be, I know he or she would be available, and I expect that he or she to actually get to the scene eventually. But his or her presence on the scene in the time of a crisis is not the main point. It's the preparation, it's the planning, it's the training, it's having everybody understand what to do, but the person won't be necessarily on site. If he or she is here, great. If not, all the pieces will be in place, hopefully.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments?
I have a
Yes.
question.
Isabella?
Yeah. So I guess my question is, who trains that guy?
The director?
Yeah.
That's a good question, and we actually have some new requirements from the state on school security training, whether it be the coordinator or other districts, bigger districts have a director of security. There are courses at the county level and also at the state level, and the requirements of the job would be to be familiar with school security generally, from experience, and then also there will be ongoing training. I would say usually at the county level, where everyone job-alike trainings happen, and all the director of security or the security coordinator together and learn about best practices and kind of feed off each other.
Okay. Thanks.
Other questions? Dave?
Do other districts have this in our area specifically, let's say?
I'd say generally the larger districts do. That's another part of my thought about the part-time. Some districts will, or I should say districts are all over the map in terms of where the ultimate responsibility for security lies. Sometimes it's in the buildings and grounds department. Sometimes it's with a principal. Sometimes it's with assistant somebody. My concern with those arrangements is that those people are not experts in school security. So the bigger districts can afford to have they might have a staff for all I know, but we aren't at that point.
So you think this is imperative to have a person who would be in charge of basically all of our 6 buildings with like a cohesive plan of action?
Yeah, I think the key word there is cohesive and consistent, and training of everybody being on the same page with regard to our responses to security.
So Marshall's brought up a point before about having an assessment done of our security. Will this person, like when we're looking for someone, are we going to look for someone that's going to be able to, that has experience, is be able to pinpoint maybe flaws in our current security? So like, for example, if they're monitoring a drill and they see something is flawed about how we do that drill, that they're going to be able to correct or provide some guidance on how to correct that?
No question. Also, however, we wouldn't rely on that for this one person. I'm glad you brought that up. We have scheduled for the early part of the school year a visit by the county school security expert team to each building and to do just what we were talking about. I hope to have this person on board so that he can go around with that expert team. If it ends up being a consultant and not the county, that's fine, but I think the county's a good start. And then this person, this is the big key, would be responsible for gathering the feedback and ensuring that the changes take place. Right now, we have no one person for that. And so the building principal might get these ideas, or maybe the security coordinator, but he's over in the high school doing his thing as assistant principal. The principal may not be all that familiar with school security. She or he might be trying to learn it. And I think the idea of this person, along with the county experts and our local law enforcement, who are also going to be doing these walkthroughs and security assessments, combined with all these different perspectives, I think, and then a point of responsibility for accountability of the changes, I think is key.
Great, thank you. Other?
We did speak of that earlier, and okay, so the high school security specialists will be supported by the high school. And this person will of course coordinate with the high school, just like they do with all the principals, but the specialists will be supervised by the high school principal.
Any other questions or comments? All right, well, thank you so much, Jim. Oh, can we now read the vote yet? Okay, yeah, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, thank you. The motion passed. All right, we'll now move on to our Assistant Superintendent Report. Dr. Dwan?
Thank you. Good evening. There are no action items, but we do have one informational item regarding our new staff induction program. After a rigorous hiring process throughout the spring and summer, we were so excited to welcome our new faculty last week. They attended 3 days of learning sessions last Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Our high-quality induction programs include programs for years 1, 2, and 3, or faculty in years 1, 2, and 3, to help them acclimate to our school district, and of course, ensures a focus on equity and culture responsive education. So I'll just walk through what our years 1, 2, and 3 inductees engaged in. So yeah, our year 3 inductees engaged in a book study led by our instructional coaches using the text, Culturally Responsive Teaching and the Brain. Our year 2 inductees engaged in learning sessions with our instructional coaches that focused on differentiated instruction through a lens of equity and cultural responsiveness. And our year 1 inductees engaged in learning sessions led by administrators in various departments, including our new employee orientation with our HR department, an overview with our student services department. Our technology department reviewed technology tools used in our district, as well as technology resources to support instruction and curriculum. They engaged in a learning session focused on culturally responsive education, followed by a series of workshops focused on understanding Danielson's supervision and evaluation framework, again, using a lens of equity and cultural responsiveness. Special thanks to all of our instructional coaches, our directors, our principals, assistant principals, supervisors, all of whom helped facilitate all of these wonderful, high-quality learning sessions over the 3 days of our induction program. Our facilitators embedded opportunities throughout these 3 days for staff to make connections and build relationships and start helping to create that sense of belongingness, which we know is so important. And of course, a very special thank you goes out to Dr. Schmidt, our Director of Teaching and Learning, for her tireless efforts with coordinating and leading this high-quality induction program. That concludes my report.
Great, thank you. Any comments or questions? All right, well, thank you again. We'll now move on to our board solicitor report. Michelle?
Hi, good evening. I do not have any informational items and no action items for this evening.
All right, thank you for that quick report. We'll now move on to our board secretary report. Wade?
Yes, thank you. There's no informational item, and we're presenting for approval 3 action items: the May 31st work session meeting minutes, the June 6th regular public meeting minutes, and the July 21st special public meeting minutes, which are documents 10.1, 10.2, and 10.3. So we're requesting approval of action items 10B1 through 3.
Do I have
So
a
moved.
motion?
Second.
All right, the motion's been made and seconded. Are there any questions or comments? All right, seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Can we now have the board treasurer report?
Thank you very much. No informational item, and we're requesting approval of the acceptance and minuting of the treasurer's report for May 31st, June 30th, and July 31st, 2022 per document 11.1. So the requested motion is approval of action item 11B1.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
The motion's been made and seconded. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Wade. All right, we'll now move on to our human resources report. Danielle?
Good evening, thank you. For tonight's HR report, there are no informational items, but I do have 11 action items for your consideration in total, so thank you for your patience. The first 4 action items include retirements, resignations, appointments, changes in status, leave of absence, extracurricular postseason pay, extracurricular changes, volunteer and substitute additions, and extended school year appointments. Please note that items in bold in section 12.1 were revised or added late, so you can take a look at that. Action item 5 represents salary degree changes for professional staff that earned pre-approved credits for column movement on the professional salary schedule. This does happen every fall. You will see some on the next agenda as well. Numbers 6 and 7 are for our fall extracurricular activities and year-long activities for the upcoming school year. Action item 8 is the approval of amendment to agreement for Gallagher benefits. Gallagher works with us as a broker consultant for our healthcare plans, as well as assisting us during negotiations. They're a big help this year. So item 9 is the inductee mentor list. This is not the whole list. You'll get an update. We met the deadline, and you'll get an update in the next board agenda on the rest of our inductees and mentors. We've been very busy in HR hiring. Item 10 includes new and updated job descriptions. And then finally, item 11 is Penn Behavioral Health Agreement. Penn provides our behavioral health service to district employees through our EAP, which is an employee assistance program, and that's available to all of our staff. So thank you for your consideration, and this concludes the HR report this evening.
Thank you, Danielle. Are there any, I guess kind of a motion for approval of action items 12B1 through 11?
So moved.
Second.
All right, the motion's been made and seconded. Are there any comments or questions?
Yeah, I have a question for Danielle. Do we have any staffing vacancies at this point? Or are we fully staffed?
We are still working. We have a handful of positions left, but the team has been working nonstop doing first round interviews and demo lessons. We still have some this week. So I'm hoping by the end of the week, we're gonna have everything filled so we can start the school year with all the teachers that we need on Monday. So just a few.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I'm not sure if this is a question for you or for Jim, but a couple months ago, we had that list of classes, the number of students per section, and there were some highlighted in yellow that may need additional sections. Do we have an updated list that shows how many sections are now going to be for each class and the class sizes?
We do. Sort of what Danielle was getting at is the boards are revolving a little bit, but we'll have that next board meeting.
Great, thank you. Any other comments or questions?
And I'm sorry if you mentioned this earlier and I missed it, but how many new teachers and staff do we get for this year?
I'm very embarrassed, but I don't have the number. It's been a very, very busy hiring season. So, but I can definitely get that for you and send that out to the board. I do hope to maybe next month I can present on the areas in which we hired and the numbers. That might be a better idea. So, but I'll get that out to you.
Yeah, that would be really nice to see. Thank you.
It feels like a lot.
Well, we also have one of those videos that we sometimes have that shows all the teachers.
Yes. That's
Yeah. Oh, yay. Okay. I always enjoy that, seeing all the new teachers. All right. Any other comments or questions?
No.
All right. Seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right. Motion passes. Thank you. Communications Committee report, Zeffie?
I have no informational or action items for this week. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Ronnie, Curriculum and Technology Committee report?
Informational items and not to do one. Quite a few.
Yes, thank you. There are 8 action items this evening. Action item 14B1 includes document 14-1, which is an annual memo to the board for seeking approval of the school starting and ending times for both students and staff for the 22-23 school year. Please note that there are no changes to start and end times for this upcoming school year. We will continue with our work evaluating start and end times, and if and when there is a decision to start to change the start and end times, the plan, as we know, is to implement those changes beginning of the 23-24 school year. So throughout this school year, families will certainly receive communications about any of those potential changes for the 23-24 school year. And they can access information on our dedicated school start and end times webpage to see any latest news and information. So this action item is pertaining to the current 22-23 school year start and end times, which have not changed, just to be clear.
So they changed.
No, no changes. For action item 14B2, we are seeking ratification of the outplaced educational services and tuition costs for extended school year in summer of 2022 for 4 students presented on the table in document 14-2. For action item 14B3, we are seeking approval of anticipated outplaced services and tuition costs for the 22-23 school year. Document 14-3 presents a table of anticipated outplaced educational services and tuition costs for 45 students for this upcoming school year. The exact anticipated total is listed on that supporting document, which shows approximately $2.2 million. In some cases, contracts are still under review with our solicitor, or we have not yet received a contract, and the tuition is an estimate at this time. The contract status for each student is noted in that table. This is an annual request for approval. For action item 14B4, we are seeking preliminary and final approval of extended field trips with our high school athletic teams. This approval includes annual athletic state championships if teams qualify, and winter athletic events that are not part of the PIAA postseason. For action item 14B5, on Tuesday, August 23rd, which is tomorrow, we'll have a keynote speaker from GOMO Educational Services for our opening day presentation with all staff. During that opening day, the keynote speaker will present and engage staff on the importance of building relationships and helping establish a sense of belonging. Staff will learn strategies for developing resiliency and how to view challenges as an opportunity to create better outcomes for our students. So that supporting document is 14-5 for those professional development services. For action item 14B6, we are seeking approval to apply for the Pennsylvania Commission on Crime Delinquency, that's the PCCD, School Mental Health and Safety and Security State Grant, in the amount listed on that action item. This document 14-6 includes the district's tentative plan used for these funds. So this evening, again, the board is asked to vote to approve for the district to apply for the PCCD grant. For action item 14B7, we are seeking approval of the revised district student code of conduct dated August 22nd. Again, a memo was sent to the board earlier in August, and revisions were reviewed this evening by Ms. Latour during a presentation earlier during this board meeting. Regarding action item 14B8, this summer, 23 district administrators participated in a leadership professional development opportunity with Bartell & Bartell to learn how to optimize interpersonal effectiveness and team alignment. We learned how to apply new tools and templates, leverage our strengths, and have successful outcomes when we have difficult conversations. Additionally, our leadership council received one-on-one coaching feedback. A memo was sent to the board in early July about this leadership training. For action item 14B8, this evening we'll be seeking ratification, just to clarify, not approval, for contracting with Bartell & Bartell for professional development services in the amount not to exceed $9,000. So this evening we are seeking a motion for approval of action items 14B1 through 14B8.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
A second?
I'll second.
You'll second? Okay. A motion's been made and seconded. Are any questions or comments? Go ahead, Sophie.
Hi. Can't help myself. So field trip requests from the baseball team.
Saw this and had the same question.
This is quite the extracurricular trip. Do we know any more things about this? And are we paying for the chaperones as well? It's it's right before 14.5.
I know the cost of field trips has come up in the past, and one of the things that we've talked about is the district works to cover those costs through various fundraising efforts. I can't speak specifically to the baseball team. I can certainly explore that to confirm, but I know that is something that we have we've learned. We have learned. And in terms of the list of trips, is that what your query is
Well,
regarding?
this trip is at the Disney Caribbean Beach Resort. So little flag for me. And I wouldn't want us paying for this out of, shared funds. Like, I would hope this is something that they're fundraising on their own.
I know that they do a lot. That's where they primarily get a lot of their funds to cover the costs for trips. Is I know they have like.
I'm almost sure positive they do all the fundraising for that, but we'll confirm.
Yeah, please. From an equity perspective.
Well, yeah, because it says fundraising and then personal. So I'm sure parents kick in some money, but what if some can't,
Excellent point. Always a concern of ours, and we'll address that as well.
I had a question regarding 14.6. So with the grant money, we're going to get 2 full-time contracted mental health therapists for 2 years at a cost of $172,940, and then one. Okay, excuse me. And then we're also going to be getting the director of security. That person's getting paid the same for the part-time position.
No, so that the security, the grant in question here has 2 different pieces. Exactly half of the money is going to mental health, and this happens in all districts, and half goes to security. Our thought would be to hire a mental health specialist with the half that goes to mental health. And then with the half that goes to safety and security, use some of that to pay for the new district security coordinator. We'll have money left over, in which case we'll have some other associated like equipment, things like cameras, walkie-talkies, etc.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions?
so are we voting yes to the baseball trip with the caveat that you'll just let us know that it's all okay? Is that how we do this, or do we pull that out and wait for review?
That part is up to you. I mean, we can get the information to you first thing, as soon as we can tomorrow.
Is this something that happens every year? This is my first year.
It has happened in recent years. I don't know about everything.
So just to clarify, my understanding is that the field trip for the baseball team, what is being voted on is board approval for them to go on the trip. It is not board approval of funding for the trip. The source of trip funding is noted in the forms. It's fundraising / personal. My understanding is that in the past, they did a lot of like fundraising to generate the funds to pay for the trip. But as a board, through this action we're going to be approving is permission for them to go on the trip. So then if there was going to be down the road because of a shortfall in personal fundraising on their part, they wanted to come to the board to request funding to cover it, then there would be a separate action item that we would review and need to vote and approve.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, motion passes. Next, we'll move on to facilities and transportation. Joe?
Thank you. We haven't had a meeting for quite some time, but we did get a presentation this evening on current plans for the Bluebell Elementary expansion project. But for this evening, we have 2 action items. The first one is a pretty standard action item to approve the discarding or selling of obsolete equipment. That's in document 15.1. And then action item 15B2 is the approval of about $20,000 in total for fees to Dewey Engineering for 2 efforts they helped us with. One is applying for a grant for some funds to help with the high school multi-purpose synthetic field project, and then fees for some administrative activities related to approvals of the elementary school modulars at Bluebell. With those modulars are just sort of a short-term stopgap measure until we can get a long-term solution in place for Bluebell. So I'm seeking approval of action items 15B1 and 2.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, the motion's been made and seconded. Are there any comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll then move on to our Finance Committee report. David?
Thank you, Amy. We have no informational items. But like the Facilities Committee, we haven't met in a while, but this is all Wade's doing. The action items we have are 16B1, approval of financial reports per document 16.1. 16B2 is approval of winter sports supply bid award for document 16.2. Item 3 is approval of the 2022-23 bus schedules with any necessary changes due to special ed placements or other updates. And these are to be on file in the business office as of today. And then item 4 is approval of the list of payments issued for the months ending May 31st, June 30th, and July 31st for document 16.3. We're seeking a motion for approval of action items 16B1 through 4. Please.
Thanks, David. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Thank you. Are there any comments or questions? All right, seeing none.
I have a
Oh,
question.
sure. Go ahead, Debbie.
Wade, can you help me understand on 16.1, in that section, we have funds for all the different activities from high school, middle school, so on and so forth. Like, are these funds that we allocate to these clubs, or are these funds that they're raising on their own? Like, how does this work?
Yep, you hit it. The second option, it's their fundraising or other fees that are, collected, and then it's distributed in accordance with whatever the wishes are of the various class presidents of whatever. But it is not district money, I think, in any of these areas.
Thank you for that. No other questions.
You have another question, you said? Oh, no other questions. Actually, I have a follow-up to her question. So looking at the class accounts, like there's money still in here from like the class of 20 and 21.
Yep.
Like what happens to those funds?
A great question. Again, both questions great. Thank you for those. So truthfully, I saw the same thing, Amy, and that's why I sort of recognized it too. We want the principals to clear their money out as the classes leave. And that year sort of stood out, and we need to get that cleared out. What ends up happening is they end up having to contact the class and make sure, whether it's they voted to distribute the money for a table or something, whatever it is, they have to, the class president, vice president, et cetera, they have to vote for it, and then the funds are distributed. So we just need them to get the action, and however the money is going to be spent by that group, they need to do it and clear it out. Our auditors actually sort of will look at the same thing if it sticks around too long. You want the money to leave as soon as possible based on the fact that the class has already graduated.
And what happens, like, I'm not sure, like, I'm assuming all these clubs are still active. Like, let's say a club is no longer active, it dissolves. Like, what happens then with those funds?
Yeah, that's a great question. Most of our clubs stay pretty active, so it probably doesn't happen that often, but I'll find out. Maybe there's an action to try to do something with the last bit of money before the class disbands, or where they take the money and they distribute it to the rest of the student body. I don't.
All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right, seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you. I will now move on to our Policy Committee report. Marshall?
Thank you. I have no informational items and no action items. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Racial Equity Oversight Committee, Paul or Joe?
Thanks, Amy. We have no informational or action items for this evening. Our first meeting of upcoming session will be October 17th. One addition to our ongoing meetings for our upcoming year, We plan to hold a community session, which will allow input from the general community to actually provide their ideas and thoughts on an upcoming topic during one of our scheduled meetings. And so that was something that was discussed last year that is a happy addition to the upcoming school year. But we look forward to kicking off our meetings in October 17th.
Great, thank you. Any comments or questions? All right, thanks again. Going under the report of board representatives, extracurricular, Marshall?
We have not had an extracurricular committee meeting for a few months. I will report back the next time we have one, including on the issues that were raised this evening.
Great, thank you. Likewise, the MCIU Board of Directors and Legislative Committee has not also met for a few months, so I don't have a report. Ronnie or David, do you have a report from North Monco?
We attended the North Monco Zoom meeting on August 15th.
Zoom.
And they are still working on their health and safety plan. 1/3 of it finished. They are fully staffed with their teaching assistants. And they have a capacity project. They have more students wanting different sections than they have room for. So they're working on that. And that's about it.
What are their plans to address that? I've heard about that from, what are their plans to address the issue of capacity? Because I've heard that complaint from parents that their children want to get into programs that they aren't able to get into.
Well, they're trying to steer them to their second and third choices. They can only fit so many because everything is so hands-on in the different areas. So they're trying to help kids at their second or third choices.
But if my career goal was to be a cosmetologist, like going then to something else, like one of the other programs, like that going to my second choice may not be, my career objective. So are they, what do they have any plans though to really, other than steering someone to another career, do they have any plans to address capacity?
Well, it's going to take 2 summers to finish analyzing what they need, new equipment, classroom, and the workforce needs. So it's kind of in the plans, but it's going to take time.
I can add to that too. Also, it's an age-old complication at the tech school is to regularly assess the viability of a program. So I'll throw one out there, horticulture, I think, is one that's usually on the bubble. And they have to decide if they want to continue to offer a program that has empty seats and therefore is using a building space, or say, expand and take that program away and expand cosmetology into that space and offer more seats there. You can't go back and forth so easily. So it has to be done over several year time to assess interest level in X, and then make program adjustments. So I think, Ronnie, you said like 2 years there. It's also a look at the facility itself, because maybe they don't want to cut back on, say, construction or carpentry rather, but they also want to add something. Well, then maybe we capture that garage over there, or maybe we build a new space over there. Not a whole lot of place to expand, but there's thinking about it.
And how do they choose who gets into the program and who doesn't?
That's a long answer.
All right, thank you. And any other questions or comments? All right, thank you again. And David, did you have anything to add?
Ronnie covered everything.
Okay. Thank you. All right, PSBA liaison.
Not right now, but soon.
Thank you. All right, that brings us now to our second public comment period. I'll remind everyone again that we allow a maximum of 5 speakers on any particular topic. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. And again, it's not our practice to engage in dialogue with speakers when appropriate. We will follow up with a response on our district website. And we have 1 person registered in person, and that's Carmina Taylor. Oh, you turn it in. Karina, you can come up. Yeah.
So I may go over 3 minutes, so I'll try my best. On the paper, I talked about a V&A grant and the Alumni Hall of Fame. So as the lead consultant, as the consultant for the Montgomery County Montgomery County Cultural Proficiency and Equity Student Ambassadors Program, I wrote a grant. I got it from the V&A Foundation from Greater North Penn. And their service area for school districts is Wissahickon, Souderton, and North Penn. And so I wanted to make an announcement. I think I did it before, but formally on September 7th, we are offering a parent orientation to our parent dialogues for our inclusion grant. So I'll put the information, I put the information on all the Wissahickon forum pages, but I wanted to just say here publicly that any parent that wants to be a part of these dialogue circles, a part of the inclusion grant, Wissahickon is one of the school districts of the 3. And with my 2 minutes left, I just wanted to show you that this summer I cleaned out my closets and I realized I had 20 Wissahickon t-shirts. But I wanted to share with you guys that this is a PTC volunteer t-shirt that we had. Tony Reed and I were the first Black, the only Black co-parent, co-PTC parents in the high school, in the history of the high school. And we really, when I thought about this t-shirt and all the 15 that I had, it just reminded me that I have a vested interest in this school district. So I wanted to, again, give this opportunity to give the board another opportunity to decide to add the Black Hall of Fame to the board, the board in the high school. And I just wanted to leave with these facts, or I'll email you guys. But from 1996 to 2006, there were no minority teachers hired in this district. In 2008 to 2018, no minority teachers in this district. In 2009, as an alum, I asked for the Audion to be renamed. At the time, I had bipartisan approval for that. No one has asked for anything to be renamed in this school system. From 2006 to 2016, the district spent $700,000 paying for AP exams and paid $154,000 for the Delaware Consortium. And in 2019, I asked for a class memorial in the high school. My point in all of this is that I have been up here for years asking for things, and I ended up getting approval, but all the things that I've asked for, no alumni group has come back. Nobody's asked for anything to be named after anyone. No class has asked for anything to be put up in the school. So when there's disparities that have happened to the minority community in the school system way before all of you, I think it's totally appropriate for us to ask for the board to make a vote to allow us to put all of our honorees that have been inducted twice into the Black Hall of Fame, into the board that we off-paid. I just want to ask you again, please consider that as something you vote offline or bring it back up. I don't want to have to gather alumni back here again to ask. This will make the 6th year that I've asked for the district to acknowledge that. Thank you.
Thanks, Carmina. All right, our next speaker is Michael. Oh, do we have anybody registered online? I'm sorry, Michael, just hold on 1 second. We usually go back and forth.
No speakers on Zoom.
Okay, so Michael, it is your turn. Sorry about that.
All right. I was project louder, but and I'm here to talk about busing and crossing guards, just some concerns I had that go beyond, I think, just my family. And so I hope I can find connections with other people here. And this has nothing to do with, like, I've talked to Mr. Wade Davis, who's been very helpful carrying out the board policy. So there's no criticism of any individuals here. It's basically the board policy I want to raise questions about. And this came about, I have an incoming 6th grader and just learned that it sounds like up to 2-mile radius, students have to walk to school. These are 11-year-olds. I don't know, that just kind of surprised me. And then, also I'm near a bus stop that would have about 8 students going. And I understood the explanation on that. It was an equity issue, right? If we do it there, we have to do it everywhere within that 2-mile radius. And I kind of agree with that. I know it's a money issue and it's difficult, but I would urge you to do more, to make it so more people can be bused from those distances. But I understand busing isn't going to happen overnight and there are costs involved. So that moves me to crossing guards. Again, kids who are walking 30 minutes each way. I'm worried about a couple intersections on Hendricks. And I know they've been looked at, and it seems to me the first issue is individual student safety. I am concerned about that, and I just hope it's thoroughly looked into. Looking at Hendricks and Tennis and Hendricks and Mount Pleasant, it seems to me that there's enough traffic there that there should be crossing guards. And one of the explanations I had was that we'll look again in the fall. And again, Mr. Davis has been very helpful with this. But one of the explanations is I don't anticipate a lot of foot traffic. I think for a lot of this, there isn't a lot of foot traffic because we know a lot of parents are driving their kids to school and bypassing this probably out of some of the same concerns that I have. And again, I think these concerns hit issues that we've talked about here today. Safety, again, for the crosswalks, equity, and that's what I'd like to kind of end on. For my son, he'll be okay. He'll gain some character walking up and down Hendricks, or more than likely he'll get me to drive him when it's raining. So, and any changes probably won't happen in time to benefit him. They definitely won't happen by next week. So this is something I want you guys to think about long-term. When I think about it, this is an equity issue. You're gonna have kids whose parents don't have cars, are working several jobs and can't drive them to school. Can't change the work schedule, have other kids at home. So you're gonna have kids walking, again, 30 minutes or more through the snow, uphill both ways. But coming to school and sitting next to a kid who's been chauffeured in the seat, their hindquarters are warm from the seat warmer. And, starting off behind. So if we're talking about achievement gap, I think it affects that as well. So again, safety, equity, and I would include also belonging. I hope you can consider some of these policies. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Katie, is there anyone registered online? All right, then we will move on to board comments. Do any of my fellow board members have comments? Deanne?
Oh, yeah. Well, Mr. Frost I think I stood up here last fall and gave a very similar speech myself. We live close to each other. We just found out, and I have similar concerns for my kids. I would like to see us look at crash data from the intersections mentioned in conjunction with the Ambler Police Department. I don't know if Wade, you could reach out to Chief Borkowski regarding that to see, so many parents in Ambler have reached out to tell me how dangerous that is for their children. And what we've done effectively is create a culture of driving kids to school because parents know that it's just dangerous to let their 6th grader looking at a phone walk to school because there's also a driver looking at a phone blowing through a stop sign. It's not safe. I walk my kids every day. I walk through that intersection at least 4 times a day or more. And it's not safe. And I believe we should have a crossing guard at that intersection. I also think we need to warn our Shady Grove 5th graders that they're not going to get a bus. All the LGE kids already know it, but we probably need to tell them more in advance, you're not getting a bus. You have to walk 1.5 miles to school. It is far. It does take 20 to 25 minutes for my kids to walk to school. It's far. Well, we have a bus in elementary school, but we won't in middle school and high school. I also think we need to allow biking to middle school and high school to allow more students a faster way to get to school. Again, I think we've created a culture of parent drop-off, and I think it's detrimental to our kids and our families. So thank you for your comments.
Thank you, Deanne. Debbie?
Speaking about driving and equity, my pain point has been pre-high school season sports. I have to drop off my daughter at 6:45 a.m., pick her up at 10, drop off my son at 8, pick him up at 1, then drop him off at 3, then pick him up at 5. This is every day. I have hired someone to do my Ubering because I work, my husband works, and I can afford it. And luckily, I found someone who's willing to schlep my children around. But how about the kids who don't have that option, or the kids that their parents cannot do this? I mean, these times are so inconvenient and so unrealistic that I don't think anyone's thought about this. And PS, if you don't make these preseason practices, good luck getting on the team. How about that for equity? So I'm sorry, but this has been my biggest pain point, because I don't like it, but it's also I don't know if our whole district is able to tap into this option that we offer our kids, because we're not really my kids cannot bike to school. I am at the very last neighborhood of Wissahickon. There's no way, it takes me 20 minutes to drive to the high school. So I think we need to start thinking about these things, because it's not fair. It's not fair at all. So, sorry, this been we're not done with the second week, but it's been a tough 2 weeks getting my kids back and forth to the high school.
Thank you, Seppi. Any other comments or questions?
I just want to echo Deanne's sentiments and your sentiments too, because I've actually had the opportunity to help out with Crossing Kids for the bike event that was held. And I almost got hit by cars standing there trying to cross the kids. So I know how dangerous that Hendricks and Mount Pleasant really is. So thanks.
Have we looked into talking to their home and school association at Lower Gwinnett to see if there's parent volunteers to do this? We have, my kids go to Stony Creek, and I feel like we have such a great group of parent volunteers. Have we looked at that with Lower Gwinnett to see if they'd be willing to do that?
There was a volunteer who was standing at that one corner and she was told, no, don't do it. I don't know if it was a legal issue, or, we didn't want her, a liability issue. I don't know.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? All right, then do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. Thank you.